The force and duration of contraction can definitely vary in response to the stimuli of different frequencies and intensities. So each muscle, as you know now, is served by at least one motor nerve. This motor nerve contains axons of up to hundreds of motor neurons, and the axons continue to branch, and each of which forms a neuromuscular junction with a single muscle fiber. So this leads us to what a motor unit is. A motor unit is the nerve muscle functional unit, and it's defined as containing a one single motor neuron plus all the muscle fibers that it innervates. So the smaller the fiber number, the greater the fine control. So let's consider a couple different motor units. I'm going to abbreviate as MU for motor unit. We have motor unit number one and motor unit number two. Let's say motor unit one. First of all, both of them, a motor unit is always going to begin with the motor neuron. So there's always one motor neuron, and I'd like you to think of that motor neuron kind of like a cable that's coming into a house, and that cable then is going to send a signal either to just one TV or to many TVs. And those TVs would be like the muscle fibers. So let's say, for sake of argument, that motor unit number one is going to have the motor neuron that sends a signal then to 10 muscle fibers. So you can imagine a cable coming into a house with going split to 10 different TVs. But then there is another motor unit, which is motor unit number two. It's going to have the motor neuron that goes to 900 muscle fibers. And those muscle fibers would be analogous to TVs that would be sending that signal. As you can probably imagine, the signal is going to be much better for motor unit number one because that signal is not being split nearly as many times as it is in motor unit number two, which goes to 900 muscle fibers. So in the body, an example of motor unit one would be a muscle that you're going to be learning about in the next chapter called the orbicularis oris. It's our kissing muscle. Whereas a muscle that resembles motor unit number two would be the gluteus maximus, which is in your butt. And I think we can all agree that the orbicularis oris is much more finely controlled than the gluteus maximus. So to see an example of this and the diagram of it, we have the motor units. We have motor unit 1 and motor unit 2. In both cases, this is the motor neuron axon that's then going to extend to the muscle fibers. So we can do the same thing that we just did on the last slide. On the right-hand side, we see a photomicrograph of a motor unit, and you can also see those motor neurons extending down to muscle fibers. So for motor unit number one versus motor unit number two, if we count out the fibers, motor unit one, it goes to two different muscle fibers. Motor unit 3 is going to be just a little bit different. It's going to have three muscle fibers that receive that signal. So it's not a big difference, certainly not as much as I showed you in the previous slide. But regardless, motor unit 1 is going to be more finely controlled than motor unit number 2. Now, when we measure this, for example, in a laboratory, the graph that you can kind of see on your right is what we would see recording a simple muscle twitch. That's the simplest contraction, resulting from a muscle fiber's response to a single action potential from a motor neuron. It's not what we would see because there's going to be many action potentials that stimulate muscle fibers in our body. But regardless, that twitch is observed in what's called a myogram. What's important for you to know is that there are three different phases of this myogram. There is what's called the latent period, and the latent period is where there is no muscle tension seen. And the reason for that is the calcium is exiting the sarcoplasmic reticulum to go into the sarcoplasm. So hopefully these periods make sense because you now know the excitation contraction coupling period. The next period is called the period of contraction, and you can probably already figure out what's occurring here. This is the period of contraction when there are cross bridges formed between the myosin and the actin. Finally, the third step is kind of the opposite of the latent period. It's called the period of relaxation. And here, calcium is returning into storage. So on this graph at the bottom, we don't see just a muscle twitch. We see the stimulation of three different muscles. And this reflects the ability of fine control for a very specific or small muscle versus a large muscle, and the difference in sizes of the motor units. So the first one is what's called the lateral rectus muscle, which we'll learn about later on in the semester, but it's responsible for turning the eye laterally. So it's going to have a very small motor unit, kind of like the orbicularis oris that I just mentioned. The next muscle is the gastrocnemius, which is in the calf. And you will have to know this in the next chapter. It's responsible for plantar flexion. The soleus is deep to the gastrocnemius, so it's what's called a synergist muscle, which means it does the same thing as the gastrocnemius, but it contracts a little more slowly. So that's an example of the difference in the stimuli actually getting to the muscle itself.